Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this Zcash community call. I am Andrew Miller. I'm the board chair of the Zcash Foundation, and the point of this community call is to meet the two candidates for appointment to the Zcash Foundation Board of Directors. And they'll be answering questions today that are the top-ranked questions from the Zcash community. So I'll give a little bit of the background and context, maybe as a reminder about what it is we're doing and why. But the Zcash Foundation is a 6-person board, and we are a self-managing board. So it's the current board's responsibility to manage new board members, to select them, and so on. But we're going to continue our tradition of getting community input, reaching out to the Zcash advisory panel as a way of electing new board members. So the setting is, we're a 6-person board. We have 2 board seats that are up to be appointed. Matt Green is stopping serving after being a founding member. So he's been a board member continuously for the past 5 years about. And Ian is also stepping down, Ian Myers, after serving for about 3 years. They're both going to be continuing on with the Zcash Foundation as part of the technical advisory board, but we need to fill their 2 board member seats. What we are going to do is reserve one of the 2 board seats for us to fill through our own internal process in order to meet some strategic goals, like getting different expertise or organizational experience as we're growing. So for example, the Zcash Foundation has doubled in its total size over the past year. But what we're going to do with one of the remaining board seats is turn it open to use the Zcash Community Advisory Panel as effectively an election. And so we turned open for open nominations for board members. And we're very happy to get some very strong candidates to show up to be the candidates for this board seat. So these are Jay Verrett and Kurt Opsel, who have Jay's a law professor at GMU, and Kurt Opsel is a deputy executive director at EFF and the general counsel there. They've both been a participant in the Zcash community for a while now, so it's very excellent to have them be a part of this and get to know them a bit through this call. So we will start out by having each of you introduce yourself just a bit before we get on to the questions. So let's start with Jay first, if you don't mind.
Hey, all right. Well, thanks for having me. Good to be here, and good to meet you, Kurt, and thanks for the work that you do at EFF. So what do I do? Why and maybe a question y'all might be interested in. Why do I care about Zcash? Why am I running? I guess this is a race for this slot. So I teach securities, banking, and corporate law. I'm kind of weird in that respect because I'm a libertarian. Most people are kind of pro-regulation, and bring a much more libertarian perspective to that. So I've been involved in some think tank kind of DC policy fights for a long time, trying to bring that libertarian perspective. I'm excited about crypto advocacy, advocating for the freedom to innovate, because look, every libertarian fight in financial services I've tried to fight, I've lost. I advocated against the bailouts. I advocated for crowdfunding, which has been severely curtailed. I advocated against the Dodd-Frank Act, against expansion of KYC, AML, and I haven't had a great rate of success here in advocating for personal financial freedom and personal financial privacy. But I think this is the new battleground, and if we do it right, I think we can win. So it's a way to every fight on KYC, AML I've tried to fight and lost on the ever expanding one-way ratchet of that. I think if we do things right here, then it won't matter, as the fiat system gets replaced by a new system with privacy embedded in the system. I'm also excited just because, look, I missed the boat on the early days of the cypherpunks. I was in high school. I wish I'd have been there, and I wish I'd have been there in the early days of Bitcoin. But this is the chance to be there at the epicenter of the kind of inheritors of the cypherpunk legacy. And I just want to be around it. I want to be there, and I want to help. And this best way I can think to help. I've been on a few boards before. I've done nonprofit governance work, and I've also been on the board of a credit rating agency in TradFi. So hopefully this skill set's useful to you. If not, for this particular post, I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be involved in the Zcash community specifically, and the fight for crypto freedom and privacy in Washington generally. So this is just a great opportunity to get to know this community, and I hope I can be useful.
All right, perfect. That's fantastic. Thank you. All right, Kurt.
Yeah, so thanks, Jay. It's good to meet you as well. I've got a live call, and it's very much an honor for me to be nominated for this position. And I think that where I come from, first of all, I'm with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I've been around there since 2004, trying to make a brighter future involving privacy, free expression, innovation, and trying to develop the legal and policy framework for moving forward and having sort of a more utopian future instead of the dystopian future that, well, many science fiction has warned us about. And how can we get there? So I'm a veteran of the first crypto wars, in that case, the cryptography wars, as it came up initially in the 90s, or did pro bono work in the space and was paying attention to it, and then continued on trying to make the world safe for encryption and for open source code, establishing that code is speech. And then privacy. Privacy is one of the reasons that drew me to the Zcon community and to Zcash as a technology, so the Zcash community. Because privacy is a fundamental right, but it's not just a fundamental right. It's a right that enables other rights. It enables people to have freedom of expression by being able to get the ideas that they need, join organizations of association, to be able to have their lives exposed in a way that an intolerant society could cause blowback and have them afraid to have those positions if it will be exposed and take sort of contrary positions. It also enables people to avoid financial censorship, where the Visa, PayPal, MasterCard oligopoly can put out rules that are not, the limits of free expression as understood under international law or the U.S. First Amendment, are based on their corporate rules that can restrict where you can provide your donations and provide your facilities. And so having a privacy-enabled cryptocurrency can help with that and help push back from some of the issues that arose from having open blockchains, where transactions are put on a public ledger, and if they're ever associated with then your whole financial history could be exposed. So as I've come to know this Zcash community, I found a lot of people who are also passionate about privacy, passionate about trying to use technology to enhance the world and to bring it to a better, more private, more free expression, more innovative space. And it would be an honor for me to be part of that. I'll also just say a couple other things that I've been on some other nonprofit boards, so have some experience in working within the board system, working to enhance the organizational capacities of entities. And I was on the Usenix board for a number of years until I got termed out of that. And also, of course, worked very closely as the deputy executive director and general counsel with the EFF board. So I think bringing that extra experience to the table. Thank you.
All right, super, thanks. I love that you both mentioned the kind of continuity of the role that Zcash plays in the sequences of crypto wars and the cypherpunk movement. And again, it's an honor to have both of you participating in this. Okay, so let's start going through the community upvoted questions, and I'll ask each question to both of you, and then we'll move on. So the most uprated question comes from Adi, the leader of the independent developer team behind the Nighthawk wallet. He asked a question about education, which is important. Education is a component of the Zcash Foundation's mission. So I'll just read his question. At a high level, how do we push education about encryption of information and user data held by service providers, and how can we push forward the implementation of encryption by default processes across various protocols in Web 2 and Web 3? So this is about education, and it's also about the role that Zcash can play in educating not just Zcash users, but broader ecosystem as well. Could we start with Kurt responding to that?
Absolutely. So encryption is something that I've been passionate about for many years, as encryption is a vital privacy enhancing technology. That it gives control, especially end-to-end encryption or user key encryption, where if somebody wants to get the information, they have to come through you. And encryption saves lives. It is something that is vital for communications around the world. You are an opposition group or a dissident in many authoritarian regimes. Encryption is something that your life depends on. It also just gives you control. So, what is privacy? Some of it is being left alone, being able to control your data. And by having strong encryption surrounding your information, you have more control. And we have a lot of systems that are out there where you put data into a third party, into the cloud, and you have to trust in that third party to behave wisely with your information, maybe to push back if the government comes calling for it. And you may not have a good reason to give that trust to them, or they may not have a choice in giving out that information and even telling you that you do need to resist it because they're under a gag. So encryption, vital technology. And so how do we educate people about that? Well, I think that is getting out both to the developer community and the people that are working with Zcash and making sure that they understand the value of encryption in building probably not just encryption for the currency itself, but also building in privacy and security by design into all the features that they are developing to draw from, I guess, pop culture, keep it secret, keep it safe. Is a good message. That is the message that people want to hear in terms of is my data trustworthy? And I appreciate that the question is also talking about implementation of encryption by default across Web 2 and Web 3. So I think as an initial matter, one of the best ways to implement a privacy enhancing technology such as encryption is by default, where the user has to do nothing and they are more secure. We've seen, over the history of encryption technologies, the amount of user work that has to be involved in getting that security has sometimes been rather high. If you ever tried to use PGP, pretty good privacy. It offered email encryption, but it's not the easiest thing to use. And many people who are very technically sophisticated can and do use it frequently. But to get mass adoption, you need something which is very usable. It doesn't require having to do a lot of configuration setting and going into it. If it is built in by default, then people win. And one of the greatest expansions of encryption we've ever seen was having HTTPS by default on websites. I went from a world in which it was, only being used for e-commerce or, a few other privacy-sensitive sites, to now where you go to almost any website and it is encrypted by default, and the user didn't have to do anything. That is the best way to have implementation. And so educating on both the value of it, why we care about encryption, what does it bring, pushing back against the notion that encryption is only valuable to hide things that are criminal or shouldn't be done, but as a fundamental right that enables other rights, and educating people on how to put it into things, making it possible, and doing it by default.
That's awesome. I liked what what was the phrase that you said? Keep it secret, keep it safe. That's a pretty great slogan. I like that. You talked about the message. Can I press for maybe one bit of detail on what you think would be the right way to deliver that message? Do you imagine this through publications or through like direct outreach to people who might benefit from that message?
Well, I think that it's a couple of things. So one is looking at people who are developing and extending on the platform, and making sure that they are thinking about these things when they're developing, when they're designing things. Another is more on the public facing, trying to get at the value of encryption, both in the form of the shielded transaction, but to the public, to the potential users of the technology. And that should be, through whatever means are most effective, like getting out through social media, trying to get a memified thing where it will expand virally. And one of the things that the Zcash is already doing, the foundation, is the media aspects. So making some short buzzy things, getting them onto like TikTok, having a way of getting the message not just to the community who's also interested, but getting people who might care about these issues but aren't yet unfamiliar with both Zcash and the crypto values.
Excellent, thank you. All right, Jay, same question.
Yeah, and I have to say, since this comes from the creator of the Nighthawk wallet, here's my I guess I don't know if it's
Yeah,
showing
that's
up.
lost in the background.
Here's my
Yeah.
Nightwalk wallet. I got my Nighthawk app open. It's a great tool, and of course the syncing issues have hit almost all the wallets except Y Wallet. But once we're cleared of that, I love that tool, and I'll go back to using Nighthawk because it's and to the question, it's a great implementation because it links. One of my favorite feature of it is it links straight to SideShift, so I can get my Zcash non KYC and bring it straight to my shielded Nighthawk. And I think that's it's a great question from someone who's already started to find ways to implement what's so important, which is in this community increasing use of shielded transactions. That's the key, right? That's the one remaining piece to making the privacy promise of Zcash really sing, is increasing the anonymity set from actual use of shielded by default. Halos helps to get us there. Shielded by default in wallets helps get us there. It's already helping tremendously to get us there. And to me, the next piece is hard cold storage, shielded hard cold storage. Man, I wish I could use my Ledger to hold my shielded Zcash. And I've been hounding the people at Ledger on Twitter, when Zcash shielded, when Zcash, to the point where they responded a couple of times and like, look, leave us alone. It's not on the roadmap right now. But that's my first answer to your question. The first thing I would have in terms of a implementation in another technology is we need hard cold storage of shielded ZEC. That's essential. That's going to be essential to increasing the anonymity set of shielded transactions and shielded holding of ZEC. So that's where I'll start right away. I've seen a great idea of trying to build a connection with Proton, more of a link with Proton. I don't know what the status is of that, but that sounds like a tremendous idea. I love that we're Zcash Foundation is funding stuff that links to Tor. On the ECC side, they're funding stuff that links with Filecoin. So the community is already doing a great job, I think, on tech to tech focus on encryption and encryption by default. The one thing it's listening to the community and supporting the community in that. And the one thing I'll say is that, I appreciate that the roles of ECC and Zcash Foundation are different. ZF's unique status gives it an ability to see in a much further direction and to build more long-term projects. And I think that's important, and that's we should be careful to maintain that in ZF's role as a nonprofit. At the same time, though, we should focus our energy making sure that at the end of the day, if you let me join the board, at the end of the day, I want to hear with every project, I want to hear, how does this link back to the Zcash blockchain and to ZEC ultimately? That's not to say we're short-term pumping ZEC or anything like that. That's not what we do. That's not our ethos, and it shouldn't be. But there should always be a link between a project and ultimately, in the long term, a link to ZEC as a token, Zcash blockchain as a blockchain. And it's great that a lot of what you create is being implemented in other chains in ways that don't accrue value. It's just it's the leading tech, and everybody wants to implement it, especially on the Ethereum blockchain, and that's terrific. But our goal really should always have some foundation in helping ZEC and helping the Zcash blockchain. So I think that's important. That's a sort of tech to tech education. I also have a lot of thoughts to, I think, go a little bit beyond the original question, but we're starting to talk about that. So I'll just mention it briefly on retail-based education. So one of the projects I'm working on is I'm doing a book on crypto financial privacy. The story of Zcash is a big component of that. And I've talked about this on the forum a little bit. My hope is to get my book on the desk of every financial advisor in the United States. And part of the conversation with financial advisors about financial privacy, and people are asking more and more questions about crypto. And I think that those questions should involve a discussion about Zcash as a way to shield assets. And so I have a lot of ideas about how to help teach people about that from that perspective, from educating that conversation between you and your financial advisor about how to shield assets and how to legally sequester assets from creditor risk, which is legal to do with trusts and such. And I think that shielded ZEC should become a part of that process that financial advisors can help you with. So I think that's important. I could talk on and on about how cool I think the global ambassadors are and the future of crypto in Africa, Asia, and how Bitcoin is taking off in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa. I wish that Zcash were taking off instead. Bitcoin is taking off for obvious reasons in Argentina. I think that basically everywhere Bitcoin is starting to take off, I think we should have Zcash ambassadors there to say, what, but wait, what about privacy? And teaching them about our solution and what it means. So I would love to see ZF build more on the global ambassadors with a particular focus in Africa. I'll stop there, but those are some initial ideas to get started.
Okay, that's a perfect response. Appreciate that. Okay, move on to this next kind of sequence of questions that are a little related. This is about what incentives do like local merchants, local cafes have to accept ZEC? Do you think that that would change or shift in the next 2-year window? And then along with that, what do you think is the opportunity for Zcash to promote the use of Zcash in that setting? So you started to mention a little bit about that kind of thing. So Jay, why don't you continue there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's ultimately the goal, and that's where we should continue to grow. I know that most of the work being done is more foundational work, but you know, there's a partnership with Flexa, and I'm sure we all saw the Flexa commercial with Zuko and Josh, right? I'm jealous they got to meet the company in that. That's a great partnership, and I use Flexa for Zcash payments. But unfortunately, you know, it's not shielded, right? And not only that, but Flexa is sort of lightly KYC'd, which you know, you could put in Daffy Duck when you KYC your Flexa app, but that's probably not always going to be that way. So that's not a long-term solution for us. I love Flex. I love the AMP folks, and there's a lot of overlap with the AMP community, which is great, and I love what they're doing. But I think hopefully we could get to a point where we can have direct merchant to merchant, retail to merchant transactions with shielded to shielded transactions, not unshielding transactions required to send to my merchant, but shielded to shielded, and then the merchant can use their viewing key for sales taxes or whatever. I'd love to see us get there more. I'd love to learn lessons from the mistakes of our competitors that are a little bit ahead of us. Bitcoin Lightning is a vibrant community, but they have all kinds of issues, and so learn lessons from them as much as we can. You know, the Flexa partnership is good short term, but ultimately the goal should be shielded with merchants using native ZEC wallets. Absolutely.
Do you have a sense of any incentive issues that are there? Like, what's the an incentive one way or the other? I guess.
Well, I mean, the ultimate incentive for crypto adoption with merchants is the low fees, right? And our fee structure, as much as it is part of the spamming issue, is still very low. So we're even better than anything, and even in Bitcoin Lightning. So yeah, we could kill once we have throughput, once we have scalability, which is obviously going to take a while. We're going to destroy the credit card networks. Of course, we're not there yet, but we still need to have our eye on that as a goal. I totally agree.
Okay, Kurt, let me throw to you the same question. What are the incentives around accepting ZEC in a merchant payment setting, and how that might shift, and what we should do about it?
Absolutely. So I think, this is a very important question, is to make it sort of a viable system. Having it accepted broadly is a very important aspect of that. And two, I would say to get there, it's first of all working with payment providers that are already working with local cafes to make sure that ZEC is an available currency for people to use, and making it extremely usable. I think one of the greatest problems with adoption is that people don't find it necessarily easy to use, and we have to make it easy for both the retailers to adopt it, and for consumers to have it on their wallet, have it on their phone, and be able to do a transaction with great ease. That it is as simple as using the Visa, MasterCard, or Apple Pay, or such. That so it is sort of a seamless transaction. And then you can start to talk to people about, well, and we have lower fees, and it's better to encourage this, and try and get the cafe to be encouraging people to use ZEC for its advantages. But like the main incentive that a cafe will have to do this is because they think customers want it, or customers have this currency and will come there to use it, and they can make it of a special thing. But I would say, like, cafes may not be where you have, at least initially, the greatest policy and sort of substantive arguments of why shielded transactions are good. You might go to things like bookstores where people are sensitive about what kind of transactions they're doing, and they don't want to have what books that they buy. We'll go to nonprofit organizations, NGOs who are accepting donations, and make sure that they understand that if they want to give anonymity to their donors, they should be adopting shielded ZEC as a way for people to donate. EFF accepts shielded ZEC to allow people to have additional layers of protection for their anonymous donations. So go to people where there is a substantive argument that makes them a little bit different for being early adopters to have a privacy enhancing technology. And there are other places where this could be of great value. One of the in the post-Dobbs world in the United States, there are people who might want to have additional levels of privacy for getting abortion-related services. So I'm talking to providers of that, or providers of information about that, or they can make it so that people can pay easily and give additional protections, so that if their local law enforcement has deemed that to be unlawful, they have a level of protection to at least not get caught out through a subpoena to Visa MasterCard. Another industry which has been an early adopter of a lot of technologies and cares a lot about user privacy is the adult industry. Talking to them about how they should be able to accept subscriptions or cash payments or through ZEC. I would also say that promoting and advertising why it is valuable to get people to say, okay, I want to have this on my wallet, have this as a transaction that I can do, and then educating the retailers about you have a set of customers who value this, who might come to your store because you offer it more than the next store, and that will chain into cafes or other places doing it because of customer demand. I think that's going to be the greatest driver for that, to have them sign up, say, we accept ZEC, and then someone who is a believer in the value of a cryptocurrency say, I'm going to go get my coffee at that cafe because it is one that has an affiliation in philosophy. And I think a lot of people will do things, go out of their way to do things to support another place, a business that has these values. And then, of course, in addition, promoting that there might be better fees or other financial incentives for them to do it, but they still have to have a customer base there first.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that you point out the kind of opportunity that privacy as a philosophy worth aligning your lifestyle with is something that's an opportunity to foster there. Excellent. Okay. Move on to the next most updated upvoted question comes from Lawzak. He asks, have you ever mined or validated a block in any chain? To me, the generalized form of that is, do you have a story about your, hands-on usage at some layer of the crypto stack? Could be using it, but if you've run a node or anything like that, would love to hear about it here. Let's go with you, Kurt, first.
All right. Well, so the short answer is no. So I haven't mined or validated on blockchain. I've worked in this space for a long time, but at the policy level. So, I do have initial familiarity with Bitcoin from when it first came out. There's some interesting questions about whether it was lawful to accept that, or whether what the legal deal was. So we worked on that over 10 years ago. I come at this from a policy perspective and trying to enable the technology and the innovation to come out there and to be built. This is an exciting space because there are new technologies coming out, new ways of doing it, things that will create a better environment for these technologies. But I want to make them widespread, usable, and looking at it from creating a policy and regulatory environment and a legal environment that enables that and brings out sort of this more human rights friendly, more free expression, more privacy friendly environment. But I'm not a technologist. I'm a lawyer. So I haven't got involved in hands-on working on mining, validating, operating.
Fair enough. Maybe do you know much about the or you have any insights from the EFF accepting of I guess cryptocurrencies for a while, and Zcash at last for a little bit? If I remember right, Zcash or EFF was one of the very first organizations or nonprofits to accept crypto donations of some kind. I know it continues to.
Yeah, I mean, we did. We were one of the early ones. I mean, we sort of got sort of, you know, a little bit of a story time, but you know, way back in the day, someone else made a wallet for us and then said, "Hey, here's your wallet," and had a bunch of donations in it. Though there was a lot of confusion about you know, the legal status at the time, and also we ran into an interesting issue that we, you know, had a fair number of things. It was worth, I recall at the time, I did some calculations more recently, it was about $5,000 worth of Bitcoin. And our ordinary policy was to cash out donations. You know, we get stock, or we get, you know, someone donates a car, we cash it out. But at that time, the volume was so low on Bitcoin that if we had cashed it all out at once, that might have actually had a material effect on the market. So actually what we did initially was we used the faucet to return it to the community. And also just, you know, a matter of perspective that sometimes I think about. At the time, you know, Bitcoin was worth, you know, less than $5. So I don't know what it was, but I do remember we had 3,500 Bitcoins, which, you know, you could point out if we had kept, it would have been a very strong addition to our endowment. But nevertheless, once we got our program going for taking in first Bitcoin and eventually other currencies, but with a lot of the people who got it from the faucet then came back and redonated what they got from the faucet. And in the meantime, the value had gone up considerable. So it worked out pretty well on me. But yeah, and then as time is, you know, march forward, we have adopted more and more cryptocurrencies to accept, and so you can go to EFF and you can see a list of many different types. But I think that is part of, you know, it is a little tension these days. And as you may know, actually, a lot of people were putting pressure on nonprofit organizations not to accept cryptocurrency because of the whole, like, you know, the energy usage, especially of Bitcoin that has come about. We have stuck with accepting these currencies. It is, you know, part of EFF's donations. I also appreciate some moves to reduce the carbon footprint of it. But I think it has been an important part and something that our community appreciates.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. All right. Jay, so this question about, I know you've mentioned about hands-on usage in some of the podcasts I've heard from you, so I bet you have a lot to say about this. I'd be interested in hearing your most interesting usage-related scenario.
Yeah, yeah, sure. You know, the specific question, have you ever mined? No. Partly, you know, I can't get the scale to really effectively mine with, if my wife would let me, I'd probably, lucky. Right. There you go. That's true. If my wife would let me, I would probably turn the, you know, the heater into an ASIC and do some of that. But no, I'm trying to be respectful of where that question is coming from, and I'm guessing maybe it's coming from the debate we're all going to be a part of about maybe move to proof of stake. And so I could share some thoughts about that as part of this. And, you know, I think that the strategy right now is to just watch Ethereum and see if they mess it up, see what happens, learn some lessons before we do anything like that. I'm not one who believes we need to move to proof of stake in any urgency. Proof of work works great. There are some advantages to proof of stake. And you know, I think one of Zuko's arguments is an economies of scale argument. I think he's mostly right, though. There is some, you know, some consolidation around validators, right? I mean, there's just like basically the exchanges and Lido are doing most validation in Ethereum. So that's something to keep in mind if that move is on the table. But ultimately, it's a conversation worth having. I do some staking. I have a lot of, you know, Lido in staking in Cosmos ecosystem. So some staking with a validator, but not at the scale to mine with an ASIC myself. In terms of other usage, I've been starting up a new nonprofit to get involved in crypto fights, and particularly in the financial space, financial regulatory space, the Crypto Freedom Lab. and I do take donations in a variety of currencies, including shielded Zcash transactions. So you can send it to my shielded address. I'd love it. And I did a fundraising round on Gitcoin, and they gave me some DAI for that. But we got a lot of great. We raised a small, modest amount. Most of it, I think, is going to come from libertarian foundations and various players in the ecosystem. But some retail support, which is great. It just kind of socialized it among the community. So I really appreciate what Gitcoin does, and had a great experience there. And I'm what can I say? I'm kind of a DeFi degen. I could talk about that all day. But
I would love to hear. That was what I was hoping to prompt you on, as something as I heard you mention that you've used DeFi. I find that really interesting. Privacy as a layer is kind of missing almost entirely from the
that's exactly right. And I mean, it's so especially with Tornado Cash shut down, I mean, is the DeFi world ready for the 80,000 new IRS agents that are coming online, in combination with the incredible lack of clarity on basic tax issues, or just incongruity on basic tax issues like recognition of staking income, and the games they played with the Jarretts and their challenge to the IRS. It was despicable what the IRS did to the Jarretts. I don't know if folks have followed that case, but are you ready for that? And no more Tornado Cash. So basically, Ethereum is a surveillance chain, and everything you're doing on DeFi that you're not thinking is being watched is going to be, IRS is going to show up with a report from Chainalysis, and they're going to say, we see everything now. So not to say that you should cheat on your taxes, but there's a lack of clarity and some illegitimate, I think, enforcement tactics, underhanded tactics, and just a fundamental human right to privacy. So let's just leave it there. Privacy solution is the solution that DeFi doesn't know it needs, but desperately needs. And so that's why interlinking with DeFi protocols, I'd love to see us. I think there's some efforts to build a link to Rune and Thorchain. So I hope that continues and grows. I forget which side that is, ECC or ZF, but I think that that's important. And the ZSAs are so cool that I can't wait to just get involved. I have a lot more to learn technically about how ZSA is going to work, and I know there's some questions about how to make sure that and a study from one of my colleagues at the GME Econ department about incentives, making sure we have the right incentives so that value accrues to the base layer, and it's not something they just use us for, but doesn't accrue in the same way I think kind of happens on Cosmos in a lot of ways. So I'll just leave that there. I could talk about this all day, but I don't want to monopolize the time. But absolutely, I think there's a part of Zcash's future is the DeFi component, and I'd love to help the folks who are working on that.
All right, perfect responses. Thanks. We will move on to all right. The next most voted questions, Jay from Telegram. I think that's a different Jay than you. It could have been you from Telegram and called Jay, but yeah. Anyway, so what do you think the Zcash Foundation specifically should focus on the most? I think you've both mentioned things to focus on, so I'll interpret this as the singular area you think the Zcash Foundation should focus on the most, or you could answer just with something else other than what you've talked about so far. The question came with a list of different areas like education, regulatory advocacy, but I'll let it be open-ended there. And yeah, I'll start with that. I have a follow-on for after it. Let's have Jay, you go first.
Yeah, user experience. We can't get far without that. I guess if we have to pick, I would start there. It is frustrating it's been frustrating the whole community to deal with the I guess we're calling it the spam attack. Mm-hmm. So I think continuing to focus on grants there. So I watched some of the discussions about Ycash wallet, Y wallet, a new development grant there, and to me it was like, just throw money at the guy. He's our savior right now. Just give him the things and let him do his thing. Was kind of my take on that. So that I think that's an important focus, and I think we need to be willing to invest in that. That's in the near term. In the long term, I would say if I had to pick some things I'm really excited about. I think before we take over the whole retail payment world, I think working with DeFi is a good way, a good place to focus. And I think continuing to grow the ambassadors in other countries, South America and Africa, are really important too, where folks need everybody needs privacy, but they have unique reasons to really need privacy, either living in authoritarian regimes, but also just living in highly unbanked areas that have a more community-based finance system where they have unique privacy needs that we don't know about, like the Chama system. Privacy is very important there, and could be a big value there. So yeah, that's kind of would be my top three for right now.
Okay, so let me add this follow-up to it. So what I'd like you to try to respond to is what outcomes for, maybe pick one of those, one of the three that you mentioned. What outcomes would you look for in, say, the 2-year time window to either see whether or not the Zcash Foundation, stuck to that focus the way that you said, or if we did, what was the outcome of it?
Yeah, I guess metrics. Now this would measure the whole, all three entities in the dev fund. So it's hard to find one that would really measure our success and not kind of everybody's as a whole. But it's user adoption, number of wallets. Price is not really a good one because price is all macroeconomic. It's not specific to us. It's not particularly good price discovery these days with the macroeconomic headwinds. But yeah, it's just user numbers, wallet usage numbers, and hopefully getting starting to get some real usage in DeFi, and then discreetly, I don't know if there's, I'm sure they've tried, but if there's some way to bang on the head of the hardware wallet guys and just get them to shield it, that in the next 2 years alone will have its own dividends in terms of shielded usage. And that's another one, by the way. We need to continue to focus on shielded as a much higher percentage of things happening on Zcash blockchain, which again I think hardware wallets can help us do in a big way. Yeah, that's kind of a jumbled answer, but I think I hit everything in there.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a perfect responsive. Thanks. Okay, great. So same question. What area do you think would you say is like the topmost thing you think Zcash Foundation should focus on, or if you want to respond any slightly differently than the most one, if you've already said too much about that, then you can interpret that however you like.
Well, thanks. And I think all of these things that are listed here, of course, are important. But the question is about like what is the most one. So I'll go maybe a little bit backwards from your question of like what is the way of figuring this out. And one of them stands out, which is adoption, whether it is being widely adopted, and some of the other ones, education, development, marketing. There's ways of getting to adoption. So I'll focus on that. But the reason is that like that is what it's going to take to be a successful thing, to achieve the goals of the community of having a privacy protective alternative to other cryptocurrencies. And part of that is that our market is a values-based market where people have an understanding and a value of privacy, and they're going to choose to have a shielded transaction, or at least the currency that has the ability to have a shielded transaction. We've also got to work on the adoption of the shielding, but they're doing it because they recognize that value is important, and that is something that differentiates ZEC from other options. And so getting people to understand those values, so that's a bit of education, it's a bit of marketing, it's also about development, about building a privacy focus into the technologies, into the protocol as it develops, but getting people to say, okay, I have some choices out there and I'm going to choose this one because it aligns with a value that I find to be very important, and I'm going to move away from the more famous ones, the traditional notions, into ZEC because it offers something different, something which is better, which solves one of the problems that's been around in public ledgers for a long time. Erasing the contradiction of trying to do a private transaction when you are placing things on a very public blockchain. And so if we can get those, that education, that marketing, developing the things, telling people about it, and telling people about how we are good stewards of that value, that we are a community that supports that, will have their back. Those are the things that are going to lead to adoption. We also have to make the path easy to adoption. So that, I appreciate, as Jay was, starting out with the user experience, make it easy for someone to do. If we want it to be a successful thing in the global south and the developing world, we have to make it that is something that is easy to do with someone who has perhaps a intermittent or slow internet connection. They might be using a out of date phone, not having the latest things, and still have it so they can have confidence that they will have a secure, successful transaction they can put their faith into. Because that's a little bit of what we're asking people to do. We're put their faith into the Zcash community that will continue to develop us, continue to support those values, and allow them to have the private transactions that they want to see.
It sounds like for metrics also, I mean, you're mentioning adoption as the core thing that stands out to try to achieve. Is that something that you could imagine us using as like a performance indicator, basically on the 1 year and 2 year time span? We want to be looking for number of users or breadth
I
in
mean,
different
I think
sectors.
that certainly would help, as a metric that we should look at. But I think also it's good to have a long-term vision. It may be that in order to get the adoption point, right, things have to start to snowball, where you put a bunch of pieces in place that starts out the adoption, but it might start out slow, and then more adoption leads to yet even more adoption, right? That where it becomes a commonplace thing, it's easier. Like if more people are using it, then more retailers will be willing to put in a transaction capability into their retail establishments, and then the people who have it now have more places in which they can use it, right? That each of these things leads to each other. So I think adoption is a key, but I think it's also important to look at the long term, to try and find, how can we get to a good 5-year and 10-year future, and that may be investing in some other things that start the snowball rolling down the hill, and then it will accumulate and get to a high adoption point. We care about adoption, but we have to be looking at the long term, in my view.
All right. Thank you for responding that way. Okay, let me go to the next most upvoted question. This comes from Kworks. This is a good opportunity. Both of you come from what I would consider broadly the law side of experience here. So question is about acknowledging that one of the obstacles to Zcash adoption is this lack of legal clarity or clear legal guidance on how to go about accepting any cryptocurrency, really, still, but Zcash, a privacy focused cryptocurrency in particular. So the question is, what could the foundation be doing to provide guidance in the legal area, or otherwise to get around this obstacle and help service providers accept Zcash? So let's start with you, Kurt.
All right. So yeah, I'm sorry. I come from a legal perspective, and I think actually creating the legal environment is very important. Also providing the guidance to people so they understand the legal environment. Some of the challenges with that is that there is some uncertainty within the legal environment. There are bills being proposed that may change how the environment will be. There are lawsuits that are challenging some of those bills. So some of it is part of just like keeping people abreast with developments. Some of it is to provide some information in an easy, for a non-lawyer to understand way, about what the current deal is and what some of the risks and opportunities may be. And also, I think there's an advocacy role for trying to make that environment a good one. So like one thing that's I know has been on a lot of people's minds is the Tornado Cash situation. In that case, they're going after a mixer. Recently, they clarified yesterday that is about this alleged unincorporated association. So at least it's not about the software itself, which is somewhat good. But they also said that at this time, they weren't going after the people who developed this privacy enhancing technology. And that's something that I think can be of concern to the community. I think that code is speech. It is someone's First Amendment right to be able to develop these kinds of technologies. But like, there's, I think, some distance between what a mixer does and what Zcash does, but you can see how they are close enough that this is something that we need to pay attention to. and we both advocate on for a good understanding that people can develop privacy enhancing technologies like Zcash, and they won't be held responsible if someone later uses that technology for something which is unlawful, much as, like, if someone uses a encrypted messaging to commit something, you shouldn't hold the encrypted messenger, or if they use a phone to conduct wire fraud, you don't hold the phone accountable for that. But creating an environment where people feel comfortable being able to get in the space, either that you can reassure them what the possible legal defenses are, what the state of the law is, or where the state of the law is unclear, letting people know what the current state is, so they can understand their risks, and also giving them the assurance that we care about this, and we will continue to advocate for a better environment, working as best we can to clear the path so they can go forward and get to our adoption.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, Jay, same question. What should the Zcash Foundation be doing to help address this problem of legal uncertainty that's a blocker to more wide adoption?
Yeah, I'm not sure the foundation itself is the vehicle for the advocacy, but the advocacy is essential. And I admire what Kurt's been doing, and what the folks at Coin Center have been doing. Peter's tremendous on this. If folks are interested, I published in my Substack and on Twitter the letter I sent to OFAC on a day or two after this happened. They haven't written back to me in a response. I basically asked for an exemption to redeploy the Tornado Cash code because I wasn't a part of the DAO, and I made a lot of references to Kafka and this being Kafka-esque, and they haven't responded. I'm going to write to them again. And if I can raise the funds through Crypto Freedom Lab, I'll join. I think a third lawsuit is better than 2 lawsuits against OFAC. So I'm hoping to join in that fight through that vehicle. I think the question specific to what about legal guidance to adopters, retail adopters and such. It's a good idea. I think it's worth exploring. And I think there's on the security side, is it a security or not, particularly in the United States, you're not going to get a lot of clarity or help from law firms. They can be, they're not going to give you an opinion that's going to be helpful. But if it's a discrete issue like educating a merchant that they can fulfill their sales tax reporting requirements using the viewing key, they can accept shielded and use the viewing key to fulfill their reporting requirements. I think that's something that merchants need to learn, and maybe some law firms can help us with that. And there's law firm talent that's really excited about crypto, willing to do stuff pro bono. So I'm willing to shake the bushes and see if we can get a good lawyer who can help us with that. It's a good idea. I don't know a lot about some of the international issues, but I think if we're just teaching merchants about using the viewing key to accept shielded, I think we're doing some good there.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's switch gear just a little bit. This is a question from Lawzak. So this is about the kind of unique community grants and block reward dev fund structure in Zcash, which has been, was recreated after the first 4 years after the first halvening and is ongoing after, the second 4-year period. And the question is, do you support having a perpetual renewal of dev funds or not? Is this a permanent Zcash feature, or is it something that should conclude after the current 4-year cycle? So let's start with you, Jay.
Yeah, that's perpetual is a long time. I don't know about perpetual. Yeah, the goal is
a reasonable horizon, maybe for
yeah.
Years is the
Look, we need the dev fund for the foreseeable future. At the next decision point, I'd support renewal of the dev fund in some form or another, and maybe have another community vote about allocation or whatever. But talk about general parameters is fine, or add another recipient or whatever. I know there's a lot to talk about, but generally speaking, I'd support renewal of the dev fund next time it's up, because we're not there yet. But the goal is decentralization, no question. And we've been slowly heading that way with the great work to create ZF, and then to create community grants committee and empower them. So that's the general direction. For the foreseeable future, I think we need the dev fund.
Is there a top most important kind of a thing that the dev fund accomplishes that you think is most essential?
It at the same time continues to curate and develop the chain and its adoption while also facilitating decentralization that helps avoid regulatory risk. So it has that dual benefit that I think is pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, Kurt, same question. What do you think about the structure of the dev fund? Do you envision it continuing, if not in perpetual, because that is a long time, at least in the next 4-year cycle?
Well, so I agree that forever is a mighty long time. So you don't want to say necessarily forever. So it's good to have this check-in every 4 years or so to see how things are going. But I do think that at least for now, it is very important because this is what helps building the ecosystem. The development fund, getting an ecosystem that is robust is the thing that's going to give us all the other things we just talked before. Saying, getting to adoption, getting to a thing is having a well-developed ecosystem, a community, having a community that can use some of our collective funds to, promote values, promote the use of not just SEC, but moving to shielded. All of those things are part of what's going to make it successful, and to have a part of this going into supporting that is currently a vital thing. And it may not be forever, or it may need to be that it's rethinking about how much it is or how it works, so you can have this check-in. But having a little bit of a community funded thing, using the power of our commons to come together and do things that will help out the community, expand the ecosystem, and provide a more reliable, secure, safe ecosystem for people to say, okay, I want to trust in this. We need to have some support for doing that, and it provides that support.
Okay, super. All right, let me ask maybe a final question. We'll see how this goes. So this is the scope of this call, this election, is just about the Zcash Foundation board seats. Obviously, we care about the Zcash community in a much larger sense, and I thank all of you for participating in this. Everyone in the Zcash community gets to see it and benefit from hearing from you anyway. But I wanted to ask what you think about the unique role, specifically the role that Zcash Foundation plays in the community as a whole. Do you think that should shift or evolve in any way? What do you think about it, and what would you want to see? And Kurt, start with you.
All right, yeah. So I think the Zcash community is sort of the stewards of the ecosystem, like people who have come forward and put some of their time, some of their effort, their brain space into trying to think about how to move things, how to develop it, and how to create a environment to have long-term success. And part of that is about promoting some of the underlying values. Some of that is promoting a system that is workable, that like people can use as an actual financial instrument, and that will be adopted. And it's good to have a set of stewards who are looking at this and trying to find out the best way, who have some knowledge of the community, part of it, can have the debates internally before coming to a decision, and talk it through. And so that is a continuing value that we want to support. And I think would be honored to be part of the board that is a part to create and enable that community and help it move forward and help it grow and thrive. So I think that's the value that it brings, and I would be honored to be part of helping protect, preserve, and enhance that value.
Perfect, thank you. All right, Jace, same question. What's your thought on kind of the nature of Zcash Foundation, specifically its role in the greater Zcash ecosystem, and how do you think, if anything, that it should evolve over time?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be direct and blunt. That's kind of the way I do it. So I'm gonna just hit it. So this question, I think, is mindful of recent history, right? Debates between Zuko and ZF, the thread kind of going into that, offering some critiques of ZF from ECC side, right? I wasn't able to go to ZCon 3. I will definitely be there next year, but a great discussion among both sides at the town hall. It was terrific. On the one hand, I appreciate the difference. ZF has to be more long-term. ZF's a nonprofit. We're not here to just moon the price of SEC, right? I get that. That's absolutely true. Fundamental and foundational. I've heard some critiques from people outside of Zcash when I told some of my DeFi lawyer friends that I wanted to run for this. They're like, my feathers were ruffled by they what was it? One of them said, "Oh, Zcash, that's like a benevolent rug pull. Like they pull in money and then they fund Zcash technology, zero knowledge proof technology that everybody uses, but it doesn't really accrue value to Zec." And I kind of got angry. I was like, "Come on, man! This is like they're the inheritors of the cypherpunks, man." And they're fulfilling the promise of, you know, Satoshi Nakamoto's one unfinished component of Bitcoin was there was no privacy. They're fulfilling that, but that's how some people view it. So what's the balance? I don't know. I don't know what specifically the balance is, but I know on the one hand, we cannot be about short-term, you know, mooning the price of Zec and be that kind of thing, because there's too much of that in crypto. And we should be long-term. We should be able to fund foundational long-term stuff. And a part of the beauty of this community is it grew out of the academy, right? I'm in the academy, you're in the academy. It grew out of the academy, and ZF is kind of the part of this structure that is the more academic. And I get that, and it should stay that way. It should definitely stay that way. And maybe the way to kind of balance it is to also just ask of every project as a question. Part of the story needs to be eventually, the arc might be long, but eventually it needs to circle back to the Zec token and the Zcash blockchain. So that's how I would try to be cognizant of that, try to take seriously critiques of those in the community of ZF. Now, a lot of those are overblown and I discount them. But that one I want to be mindful of, think about, and maybe that kind of bringing the long arc and the long-term perspective back to Zec eventually is where I want to focus, to make sure that we are, you know, we are doing our part for the Zcash family, while at the same time being uniquely focused on the foundation's nonprofit and long-term vision role, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that did make a lot of sense. I thought you did a good job of threading the needle and giving that response that both balances yeah, as you said, the need for us to kind of set this, you know, broader view, but I think you've communicated very well clearly your view on the importance of tying back to Zec in some way, even if at the very long-term scale. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I guess we're doing perfect right on time for the close of this. I mean, I would say thank you again, you know, for the time that you spend. This is like the cable access, you know, news channel, wonky in a way discussion we have to do for this governance process. But you know, lots of people get to go look at this afterwards and include it in their considerations as the panel goes and discusses this. So I really appreciate the time you're all taking. I would turn it over to each of you for like a closing comment. I think we've discussed a whole bunch of things, but anything else that you would like to include in a closing comment that's not covered, this would be the time to do that. Let's start with you, Jay.
Yeah, thanks. Financial privacy matters to me a lot. In addition to kind of teaching and think tanking stuff, I also do some client work. I help clients as a practicing attorney and as a practicing forensic accountant, or a lot of different hats, I guess. I help defendants, and I see what happens to people when they don't have financial privacy and when they're operating within the financial surveillance state. I mean, I've seen people lose their careers, or almost lose their careers, or just have to deal with something for 3 or 4 years with over prosecution. And part of what makes life easy for overzealous and unethical prosecutors is the ready availability of credit card records and bank account records, the ease with which they can access those. So I've seen it, and it frustrates me, and that's what excites me about getting involved in this community and the benefits you're going to provide to so many people. And also just the link to the inheritance of the cypherpunks, of the cypherpunk legacy, and to kind of be able to touch that past and help the people that are bringing the torch forward. I'm not a dev. I don't know how to do the dev. I don't know how to dev. I wish I did. But what I can do is try to protect you, try to help with the boring nonprofit governance stuff, try to think about law and accounting, law and finance, and how that intersects with what you're building. To help with long-term vision questions. So that's what I'm here to do. If you want me to do that, I'd love to do it. If it doesn't work out, then I'll see you all at ZCon 4 and I'll be active on the forums, and we'll still be working together in a dozen other ways. So thanks for this opportunity to chat with all of you, and good to meet you, Kurt.
Love it. Thanks, Jay. Okay, Kurt, over to you for final comments.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Good to meet you as well. It's been just great to put ourselves before the community this way. I think we're putting out there our values. I think we have probably a lot of similar values, and I think I come to this also from a perspective of privacy as a fundamental right. I of course brought out the T-shirt today to show that privacy is normal. The slogan is, I think that's the future that we want to live in, which privacy is a everyday act that people are understanding and respecting. And I come from a perspective of that is a values-based thing, that is an important value that we should all share, and that takes some education. You have to push back against the folks who say, I have nothing to hide, and find those who think that it is absolutely important, whether or not you have something to hide, that you just want to be able to be left alone, to be able to do your things without someone looking over your shoulder and second guessing what you do. And like, it doesn't have to be something to look down upon, but something is every day that is normal. We want to get there. And so I think the way for this community to thrive, and for that to ultimately have ZEC thrive, is to enhance that values, to promote that values, and try and find people who agree with that to join this community, to become a part of it, and have it be more of this is a movement that is moving forward on enhancing privacy, solving some of the inherent problems, and getting it to where our main differentiator that shows why ZEC and this Zcash is different from alternatives, is something that people want to believe in, and they'll come here for that belief because they know that we support it and the community supports it, and we are there with it. And one of the things I really appreciate about this community, and why I was honored to accept this nomination, is when I went to and met all the folks at the last ZCon, and then time after time I was talking to people who really believed it, and were excited by it, and they were excited about the technologies that they were going to bring. They were going to find new and exciting ways to use zero knowledge proofs in order to transfer just a little bit of information without revealing less, solve metadata problems. Some of them were moving forward, some of them were just ideas, but it was inspiring to see people who wanted to improve the world bit by bit with their particular project, and they had a great idea of it. And it was reminded me of some of the earlier days, way back in the cypherpunk era in the 90s, when people were really excited about the possibility and future of technology. You see it all out there, and people are like, well, the internet was created and now widely regarded as a mistake. And looks like it not a mistake, because we have the opportunity to fix some of the flaws, bring back some of the things like privacy that were not always built in, and engineer that, and bring these privacy enhancing technologies to the people, to the masses, through the community, and make for that better world. So I would be greatly honored to be part of the board and helping bring about that process and bring that forward. But it's just also to my honor to be considered. So thank you for having me. Thank you for these great questions, and putting forward a wonderful presentation. We look forward to seeing the results.
Cool. Well, thank you, Kurt and Jay, and to Andrew for chairing the call. I just want to echo what Andrew said at the beginning. It's really exciting to have two such excellent candidates, running for the board. I think we're very fortunate to have two people with your experience and standing interested in joining the foundation board. So thank you both for being prepared to step up and be part of this. Well, tomorrow we'll open a poll of the Zcash Community Advisory Panel. So if you're watching this and you're on the panel, you can expect to receive an email tomorrow. If you don't receive an email, check your spam folder. Now, that poll will run for 10 days. It will close on Sunday, November the 20th, and the results will be released the following day, on the Monday. The foundation board will then consider the results and will meet with the candidate who receives the most votes. So that's it for this call. We now go into the 10-day wait until we get the results. But again, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. I'd like to thank everybody who attended live. I'd like to thank you if you're watching this later on YouTube. And if you're on ZCAP, don't forget to vote. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.